across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a good evening to you. I'm back. I'm sorry I abandoned you yesterday, but I was dragged into an earlier slot, so hopefully you were able to listen to that. Maybe you were. Anyway, coming up for the next 3 hours, talk back at midnight, of course, as usual. And I haven't finished talking about this rape case and the sentencing. And of course, we've got news now that it will go to the Court of Appeal. The sentences will be looked at, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they will be changed. So I'll be talking to a lawyer about that, who normally defends people in these kinds of cases. So it'd be interesting to hear about the mitigation that was used. That one of the boys was low IQ, the other two one had anxiety and ADHD, the other had ADHD. And it really annoys me that they were used in mitigation, because these boys, whatever else, they were able to plan and execute, film, and then put online the rapes as well. So I don't know how ADHD comes into it, and I think it's really insulting for lots of other people who do have ADHD, who don't then come on to be rapists. So there's lots to talk about with that topic still, and I didn't manage to talk to you about it yesterday, so I wanted to hear your voices, because you are my sounding board. So we'll be talking about that at midnight. The wonderful Amy Fisher will be joining us to go through the papers and also to talk about that as well. Marcus Johnston is the solicitor that I'll be talking to about what the mitigations were, why they were accepted, what this judge did, what the Court of Appeal is likely to do. So we're just going to dig into it a little bit deeper rather than just be outraged, and find out what the process is for the Court of Appeal. So stick with me for that. We're also going to be talking about youth unemployment, as we learned that 7 out of 10 people on benefits, 70% of these young people on benefits, are still on benefits 10 years later. I mean, that is just a disaster. It's a dereliction of duty by any government to allow that to happen. So we'll be talking about that as well. But first, global tensions continue to rise as the United States intensifies its dual-front foreign policy campaigns in the Middle East and in the Caribbean. The US CENTCOM, Central Command, executed what they claim a fresh self-defense strikes against Iranian targets in the Persian Gulf, testing the already fragile ceasefire. They say that these bombings didn't break the ceasefire. I mean, if it looks like a broken ceasefire and it smells like a broken ceasefire, then it probably is a broken ceasefire. I don't know. Call me old-fashioned, but I would have thought bombing somewhere where you said you wouldn't bomb them is breaking the ceasefire. And this will be the third time that America has done that while peace talks are ongoing. So it leads me to ask the question, who is it that wants this war to continue? Because whoever it is has got Donald Trump's ear. Because if you wanted this to end, you wouldn't be bombing, would you, in the middle of peace talks? Maths ain't mathin', as they say. I don't know who says that, but apparently young people do. Meanwhile, Washington has tightened its economic stranglehold on Cuba as it enforces a crippling fuel blockade. Trump recently expanded heavy sanctions against Cuba's military-controlled elites, driving bilateral relations to their lowest point since the Cold War. So what is Trump doing there? And does he just need that easy win, which he thinks that Cuba will be? Well, here to discuss all of these and more with me at the moment is Scott Lucas, I'm thrilled to say, Professor of International Politics and founder and editor of EA World View. Scott, good to see you again. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Let's start with that question. Who wants this to keep going? In whose interest is it that Iran and the US do not reach a peace deal? Because it feels to me like somebody doesn't want this to happen.
Well, Israel doesn't, but that's a separate story I want to set aside. I wish it was this easy, Petrie, in terms of this balance between conflict and these talks that are going on. So let me start with some basics. The ripple that we had last night is that the U.S. military did fire on these two Iranian boats, claiming that they were laying mines in the Strait of Hormuz, which of course is this vital waterway that Tehran controls. And the Americans, to drive the point home, also carried out a strike on the port of Bandar Abbas, which is in southern Iran. The Americans insist this wasn't a violation of the ceasefire. They're doing that for two reasons. One is, I don't think the U.S. military wants this to escalate into an all-out confrontation with the Iranians, especially given how the strait is effectively being held by Tehran. But secondly, the moment that the Trump folks carry out sustained strikes on Iran, not only do they probably sink the talks that are going on, they run into a problem because the U.S. Congress, or at least the U.S. Senate, finally on the 8th attempt last week said, you have to come to us for authorization, what's called the War Powers Act. Now, the lower chamber hasn't done that yet, but the Trump folks will be trying their luck, say if they went with those expanded airstrikes that marked out the first few weeks of the war. There's also a second problem for the Trump administration, which is increasingly important in this, are the Gulf states. The Gulf states, or at least the UAE and Saudi Arabia, wanted the Americans to put in ground troops to get rid of the Iranian regime. But when the Americans didn't do that, Saudi Arabia flipped, and they joined other Gulf states like Qatar in saying, we have to have a negotiated settlement. I guess what I'm saying to you, Petrie, is although we have these ripples of violence that take place, we're still looking at the question of talks that are on the basis of an Iranian proposal, not American, Iranian. And that Iranian proposal does not start with Iran's nuclear program. It starts with the Strait of Hormuz. So the Trump folks are in a bit of they're in a cul-de-sac. They don't really have good military options left. And if they don't have good military options left for regime surrender, they have to go into these talks to reach a deal. But how do they do that without losing face?
Well, and that is the issue, isn't it? Because even on Sunday, Rubio was saying we're a couple of hours away from an agreement. We're a couple of hours away from agreement, and we keep hearing this. But the one thing that Iran is not going to do is give up the Strait of Hormuz until they've got absolutely everything they want. And even then they may not do it. And they've permanently now got that as a threat against the West, that they can close it at any point, at any whim. They can do that, and they will do that. So how does Trump make this look like a win when the Strait of Hormuz was open before he started his campaign?
Well, you know the answer to that, Petrie. He'll go on social media and declare it's a win, even if it's not. I mean, black is white, up is down, and Trump is Trump. But let's get, I think, to that really good point you've made here. And that is why the regime did not have to surrender was for two reasons. One is they carried out retaliation on the Gulf states, which has had the effect I described a moment ago. Yeah. And second is they had this Strait of Hormuz as leverage. Now, I think the landing point for the Iranians is this. And that is, they will agree, I think, to some type of international or some type of group to oversee the waterway. So they're already in talks with Oman, which is the Gulf state that is on the south side of the strait. But they're only going to agree to that when they have a long-term assurances of their security. That effectively means not just a 60-day ceasefire. They'll want a lasting agreement, and they'll want the international community to buy in on that agreement.
Well, they'll have to back it. The international community will have to back it because we can't trust the Trump regime. We know that he tears up agreements at a whim.
Exactly. You know, in other words, remember that this is not just we also had the war of June 2025, which was the 12-day Israeli war. And that happened in the middle of U.S.-Iran talks. This war started 2 days after the U.S. and Iran were in talks in Geneva. The Iranians are not going to come out of this without some type of security agreement that doesn't just rely on Trump are on the Israelis. And to be fair, I'm no fan of the Iranian regime. You don't want an agreement that relies just on the Iranian regime as well, because those guys are not exactly, reliable on some fronts.
No, but you've got a situation here where Trump's desperation to get out of this so he can concentrate on the midterms looks like Iran will come out of this so much more powerful than it started. First of all, it has the Strait of Hormuz, which it knows it can claim at any point in the future if anybody hacks them off. They will have billions of dollars in either sanctions being lifted or in actual reparational money, which Trump's now saying that Saudi Arabia is going to pay, and Saudi Arabia is saying, no, we're not going to pay that. You said you'd pay that. They'll come out of this potentially with their uranium still there for quite some time as well. This is not a win in any regard. You have a strengthened regime that is an evil regime that treats its own people like nothing, with more money and more power than they had 89 days ago.
I mean, I think they're still weakened, Petrie. I mean, let's remember that the supreme leader killed, dozens of officers and commanders killed, the economy in dire straits because it was already in trouble before this war, and then they've taken huge damage. But the kicker here is they survived. They survived, and that's
the only thing they wanted to do.
And that is exactly what they wanted to do. That's what they had to come out with it. And here's the really horrible, if you're looking at this from the perspective of the Trump administration or others, the horrible irony that takes place here. Iran was already seriously weakened before this war. If you think about it, their allies, Hezbollah and Lebanon, had taken a brutal beating during Israel's war in Gaza, which also was a war on Lebanon. And we're seeing more of that now. The Assad regime, their ally in Syria, gone. Their militias in Iraq pushed back. The Houthis in Yemen, troublesome, but they lost a lot of their leadership because of Israeli attacks. The Trump administration had a weakened Iran 2 days before they started the war. And if you really wanted to curb Iran's nuclear program, if you really wanted to do that, because I don't think this war was about that, then you would have gone back to without the 2015 agreement, which actually built in the limits on Iran's program. But why can't Donald Trump go into that agreement? Because he ripped it up in 2018 because it was Barack Obama's.
Yeah. But so he looks like he's going to get a worse deal than Obama got.
Oh yeah, very much a worse deal. Which explains, just to add another layer to this, Petrie, you were saying, well, wait, we were told we would get a deal within a few hours, What happened last weekend is I do think we were actually close to a first stage deal. We need to make clear it's a framework deal covering the strait, covering sanctions, not the nuclear program. But then the domestic position in the U.S. cut another way. Now, most Americans don't want this war, but you have to remember there are a lot of hardliners who still want to get rid of the regime. And over the weekend, those hardliners, people in Congress like Donald Trump's friend Lindsey Graham, the think tanks in Washington, some of whom are very hostile to the regime, a lot of right-wing press said to Trump what you're saying right now, which is, if you go through with this, Iran wins. And that's when the U.S. started to pull back and say, okay, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow. But again, how long can they keep stalling on this? Because the only other option they have is to put in ground troops. And they now have ruled that out.
Yeah, they that would also be an absolute disaster, wouldn't it, in so many ways? But why then is Trump sort of conflating now and changing the goalposts to try and, I can't bear his language, to mandate other countries to sign the Abraham Accord? I mean, that is, I find that, because he's so desperate for a win, isn't he? He's going to say, look, I managed to get everybody to sign this Abraham Accord. And the people are already saying, well, we're not doing that.
You just answered your question. Yeah. He did it because he's desperate. The play was here that if the Americans get a deal, then they can come out and say, but wait, we've got this bigger picture with Israel signing these normalization agreements with all these Gulf states. But here's the problem for Trump, and that is his approach to the Abraham Accords normalization, what ripped that apart was Israel's military operations in Gaza.
Yeah.
Because once that happened, Saudi Arabia said, we can't join Bahrain, we can't join the UAE in doing this. Then this was compounded at the start of this war because the Americans didn't protect the Gulf states from Iranian retaliation. Now, the one Gulf state that is still getting close to the U.S. and Israel is the UAE. Maybe we can talk about that on a later program because it gets complicated.
Yeah.
But when you talk about the other Gulf states, especially Saudi Arabia and Qatar, they don't want any part of getting closer to the U.S. and the Trump folks. In fact,
unless there's a free and a free Palestine. That's what they've said. They want the state of Palestine to be free, independent, and existing before they go anywhere near the Abraham Accord. Well, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, well, and even equally important, they want a Strait of Hormuz that they can rely upon.
Yeah.
And they want to be sure this isn't going to happen again, which is why China's watching this with great interest in terms of capitalizing. But let me just give you the stinger on Trump's, tweet that says, "Oh, we're going to get the Abraham Accords amended." He did talk to the Gulf states, as well as Pakistan, as well as Turkey, as well as Egypt, on a conference call over the weekend, when he raised the possibility that they would all join the Abraham Accords, and someone leaked this to the media. He was met with silence, absolutely stunned silence. He would even ask that. Pakistan has broken cover and said, there's no way we're doing this. The Gulf states don't want to embarrass Trump too much, but that they also are thinking, geez, what a joker.
But also, I mean, it's the language that Trump uses as well. It should be mandatory. It's like, you're not the king of the world, Donald Trump. And especially for those states, they're not going to take a direct order from Donald Trump.
Yeah, but bully going to be a bully, right? And what has happened here is, and you asked why this war, and we could even extend this to Cuba. Why do they do this? Because bully going to be a bully with Venezuela to show dominance. A bully wanted to be a bully on Greenland and show dominance. That came up a few days ago. Here, at the end of the day, pushed by Netanyahu government, bully going to be a bully and show that the U.S. could beat up on Iran. When Iran didn't concede, when they didn't cry uncle, what's the bully to do? And the problem with Trump is he doesn't think about this in terms of geopolitics. He doesn't think about it in terms of economics beyond the markets. He just thinks of, I got to be a bully here. And when it doesn't happen, he's lost. And what he's trying to do now is to create the idea, the myth, that the bully rules the playground. And guess what? It's a far different playground now after this misstep into Iran.
Honestly, it literally could not be much worse. But let's turn our attention now to Cuba. And as I was saying a bit earlier on, he needs a win, right? Because there's no win here in Iran. And even though he can say we've decimated this, he was even saying, well, I control the Strait of Hormuz. And he's going, no, well, you don't, do you? So all of these things that he keeps saying. But what he does need is a win to give to MAGA. And Cuba, now that they have weakened Cuba to the position that it's in, it's not even just on its knees anymore, it's on its belly. That would be an easy, quick win for Trump, wouldn't it?
No, not quite so easy, because there's a problem here. Because, look, with Venezuela, what was the win in the end? And, of course, remember, Venezuela was economically crippled for years, right? Now, they got their win because they had to be the bully and abduct, kidnap Nicolas Maduro, the president. But remember that the regime agreed to that, or everyone else in the regime agreed to that. What we've got with Cuba is, how can they get the regime to agree possibly to give up Raul Castro? That would be a symbolic win. And then how would we get them to show that they're completely opening up their economy to the Americans? And what I think is even more interesting than Marco Rubio's posturing of the past 72 hours, because Marco's going to run for president in 2028. Yeah. He is Cuban descent. This is his win if it comes off. The CIA director was having open talks with the Interior Minister in Cuba last week, right? So it's not like the Cubans are like in a state of war. They're actually talking to the Americans, their head of intelligence, and say, okay, what's the lay of the lie here? Politically, economically, what are we talking about? Cuba would like to get out of its economic straits. It would like to, not be on its belly, as you say, but would they really give up that system that has run the country since 1959? And again, Raul Castro is just symbolic. He's not actually
Yeah.
the person leading this. And I think the problem here is what we could get is what the Americans did with Venezuela, which is we dominate Cuba, but we leave the regime in place. Here's the problem with that. Venezuela has not been in America's consciousness for more than 65 years, 67 years, as being this arch enemy run by this regime. Cuba has. And if you leave that regime in place, how do you tell Americans, not just Cuban Americans, but Americans, that you've finally gotten rid of Castro and his descendants?
I suppose in the same way that you've won the Iran war. I mean, you just say it and hope that people believe it. Because, I mean, there's the situation in Venezuela as well, Scott. That is not on the front pages, but it blooming well ought to be. What's going on with the money? What's going on with the oil? What's going on with the bank accounts? What's going on? They're not getting any of that money returned to them. All of that has gone very quiet, but it is a disaster.
It's a disaster unless you have got connections in Washington where you can make money off of the deals that are being cut and being made, which is exactly what's going to happen in Cuba. We could talk about, again, this on another program.
Yeah.
I will not use corruption as a word because of legal advice, but the amount of money that is being kicked around, which is not being done on a systematic basis, but going to very well-connected individuals linked to Donald Trump, that could be considered. But let me just bring you back to what I think is an inflection point beyond this. Petrie, we've been a hostage to social media, or the idea of social media constructing our reality for years. That's what Trump has traded upon. To be an extent, that's what UK politicians have traded on for years. What happens when reality punches you in the face? You can no longer go on social media and spend this. The Trump folks can come out with all kinds of nonsense about the economy or about immigration or about healthcare or about education. And Americans might think, oh, I'm not sure that's quite right. I'm not sure it quite resonates. But it's like, how do you put all that together? When you go to war with a country and you don't win it, then people see that, especially when you not only didn't win that war with that country, but you drove up the one thing that Americans notice that social media can't correct, which is gasoline prices.
I mean, I was staggered today. I was watching something, and they were saying that in California it's over $7 a gallon now.
Yeah, I mean, California is always a bit higher than the rest of the country, which gets the Trump people out of jail because, like, oh, California is run by Democrats, which actually ignores the fact there are a lot of Republicans in California. I won't explain why you get regional differences in gas prices. Another program, but the fundamental here is gasoline price at the start of this war on February 28th for a gallon of regular unleaded, $2.98. When I went to Florida a couple of weeks ago to visit my mom for Mother's Day, $4.50.
It's a huge psychological deal to Americans, isn't it, that petrol price?
It is. Price. Because of this, and if you visit America, your viewers are going to know this, Americans got a lot of cars. We got cars everywhere. When you got a lot of cars going everywhere, you got to have a lot of gasoline stations. So you've got gasoline stations every few hundred yards with those big signs in terms of the numbers that are thrown. Now, you have them in the UK, you have them here in Ireland, but it doesn't have as much of a psychological effect as it does. It's one reason why Joe Biden was defeated in 2024.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And now this comes back around. Here's going to be the real tipping point, Peter. This is interesting. And this is part of the reason why they ceased fire and they stopped the military operations. The average price I just mentioned went up to $4.50 a gallon. The highest point in the Biden administration, and that was because of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, was in 2022. That was $5.02 a gallon. If the average price in the United States crosses that $5.02 threshold, they can't say it was higher under Biden. And that's the day when they probably have to give in and even on Iranian terms, and sign the deal.
I mean, it's absolutely fascinating, the mess that can be created by one person. Scott, it's always a joy to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining me. Scott Lucas there, Professor of International Politics and founder and editor of EA Worldview. Quick break, back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it is Petrie here with you, and coming up at midnight it is your chance to talk back. And what we're going to be talking about, because I am not done talking about this and I know you're not either, I want to talk about this case now that has been referred to the Court of Appeal. The sentence will be, it's just the sentence that's been referred to the Court of Appeal. So hopefully the Court of Appeal will look at this and decide that this sentence that these three boys got were unduly lenient. But it's not a given. It's not necessarily the case. There's all sorts of legalese around this. We're going to be talking to a lawyer a little bit later on in the programme who will explain it all for us. Yeah, these two boys were given youth rehabilitation orders that were only 3 years long, and the judge, I said this yesterday, is saying, I don't want to criminalise these children. So what? I'm sorry. This is not a childish prank. This is a very adult crime. This was carried out. This was planned meticulously. It was planned. It was done, it was filmed, it was put on social media. I mean, all of it just speaks to these not behaving like children, and therefore, in my view, shouldn't be treated like children. So we're going to be talking about that at midnight. And I'd like to hear from you, because some of the mitigation that was used to explain away these children raping these girls was that they had ADHD and low IQ. One of them had a low IQ. Another one had anxiety. So are those ever an excuse when it comes to a crime like this? Because I couldn't help but think, if you've got kids or grandkids that have got ADHD, that does not a rapist make, right? That's a really feeble and pathetic mitigation in my view. But I'd love to hear from you, so do give me a call, 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk and your message to 87222. Now, though, the FIFA World Cup 2026 is almost here, and thanks to Adidas, the tournament's official match ball supplier, our friends at TalkSport are giving you the chance to be there. Well, Adidas is sending you and a friend to Dallas to see England versus Croatia live on June the 17th, with return flights, accommodation, spending money, tickets, and you get your own ball as well. The Trionder official match ball will be England's first game in the FIFA World Cup at one of the world's best stadiums. And if you're ready to get that winning feeling, have a listen to this.
Get ready for that winning feeling. For your chance to win, head to talksportwin.com or text TALK to 83338. Texts and online entries cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close 1st of June 2026 at 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus UK residents only. This is a network promotion. See full terms and conditions at talksport.com/win. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now. Full T's and C's at win.talk.tv.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and a good evening to you. This is Talk and it is Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And coming up in about 15 minutes time, I will be talking to a lawyer about the Court of Appeal, what the processes are, what they go through in deciding whether the sentences for those three boys were unduly lenient, and what we can expect really from the Court of Appeal. And as he is a defender of people who just like these boys, what the mitigation was and how that was read by this judge, because I don't completely understand it. So that is coming up in about 15 minutes time. But earlier this year, the Office for National Statistics published some research showing that nearly 1 in 8 young people continues to be inactive and NEET, that is not in education, employment or training. And a review out this week by Alan Milburn, a former Labour Health Secretary, paints an even more tragic picture where 70% of young people receiving health and disability benefits are still making those claims 10 years later, feeling abandoned to a life on welfare. Well, the report will suggest that half of those could work with the right support. But with nearly 1 million people now under 25 that are NEET, what can be done about it, and how do we avoid long-term social scarring? Well, here to discuss this with me is Sarah Young, who is Deputy CEO at the Youth Future Foundation. Good evening to you. Thank you for joining me. This is a disaster, but particularly for those young people, right?
Absolutely. I mean, when you look at the UK's record, we have a long-standing challenge with high numbers of young people not being in education, employment or training, nearly 1 million. And this is firstly a huge moral disaster in terms of young people. We know that if you spend time out of the labour market when you're young, this can have a huge scarring effect. It can affect your future prospects, your earning prospects, and even your health outcome. But not only that, there is also a huge economic trick that we're missing here. We know that our research shows that if we could look to be one of the best countries in the OECD at youth participation, that would be worth £86 billion to our economy and mean that over 550,000 more young people would be in work. So it really is a prize worth fighting for our young people, but for our prosperity in general.
Because a lot of people would look at these numbers and say, well, these are just lazy, entitled young people who just want to live on benefits.
Some people might say that, but that is absolutely not our view at the Futures Foundation. We talk to young people all the time. We listen to their lived experience, and we can overwhelmingly say that most young people are desperate to get into good work, good training, education, but there are particular barriers that are in their way, which isn't fair at all.
So some of those barriers, let's discuss those, because I was talking yesterday about the idea that the government would supply families with grants so that they would allow their 16 and 17-year-olds to take up apprenticeships, because they would lose, in some cases, £300-400 a week in benefits. The family would lose that if this young person goes into an apprenticeship. I don't understand why an apprenticeship isn't still considered education, because if it was, there wouldn't be that barrier.
Well, I agree. I completely agree that there are barriers in the system to getting apprenticeships, and the reason that is problematic is that apprenticeships are one of the best interventions that we can give to young people. We know the evidence is really, really strong, but we also know that we've seen a decline in about a third of apprenticeships for young people in the last few years. So we have to do something to change that system in favour of young people. But as you point out, we know that there are some barriers within the system that are making it harder for families and for young people to think about doing an apprenticeship as a viable route initially, particularly if those young people are from low-income families.
But a lot of people, again, will be listening to that and thinking, well, that's ridiculous, because why would a parent stop a child from getting on in life, you know, just for the sake of benefit money? That people have become too reliant on this benefit money, and they see it as a right, not a privilege.
Well, I think this is about what enables young people to get into good employment here. But we've also got to remember that we are living in a situation where there is a cost of living crisis. Families are under a lot of pressure. And so some families may be making just rational economic household decisions, and may also not fully understand the real benefits of apprenticeships, what young people can earn, what that can do for their future prospects, and getting them onto a great pathway. So we need to do much more to make sure that both parents and young people understand why apprenticeships are a really good option.
The other thing that I was looking into as well as to why the 70% of these young people remain on benefits for up to 10 years. And it's something I've talked about quite a lot with adults on benefits, and that is this cliff edge of, you know, if you risk taking a job, if you risk taking something, that the whole benefit system collapses around you, it's gone, and you have to start again if it doesn't work out. And a lot of people think, well, actually benefits are more stable, they're more reliable, I've got rent to pay, I can always pay that rent if I stay on benefits, but if I take a job, then I may be in a position where I can't. That's crazy, isn't it?
Well, I think what the situation is highlighting is that the benefit system needs to do more to help young people into work. I don't think we can, you know, penalise people for thinking about having enough income. But what we do need is a system that really does support young people to get into work. We know they want to be in work, but they do need good help to do that.
We've also got a problem, haven't we, with the lower entry jobs market, because if there's fewer jobs going around, then more experienced people might claim those lower entry jobs that were once given to people with no experience. Is that something you're finding?
Well, what we're seeing at the moment is that young people are having a really hard time in the labour market. I mean, we have a weak economy, as your viewers will know. And when you have a weak economy, often young people are unfortunately the people that lose out first, because you see declines in parts of the economy that young people would particularly go in, so retail, hospitality, but you are also seeing young people losing out and competing to jobs where there are more experienced workers in the labour market at a time when we have got a challenging economy.
And the position for young people is destined, it seems, to get worse on those entry jobs because of technology.
Well, it's an area that we need to understand much more about. We know that there are, it's a good study in the US, for instance, that looks at incoming technology and looks at AI, and it is showing that it is having some impact on younger people in the labour market. We haven't yet got a really robust good study in the UK, but often we do see that patterns in America do come over to the UK. So it's something that we should be very cautious about. And it's one of the reasons why the Futures Foundation is actually undertaking some evidence and research in that area, so we can really understand more what the impact is likely to be, and we can work that into solutions and hopefully good public policy in the future.
Because we're hearing, aren't we, from some retail bosses that, whereas they used to get 10 applications per job, it's nearly double that now, and the less experience you've got, the less likely you are to get that job.
We are hearing that from some employers, but I also think it is on employers too to ensure that their recruitment and retention practices are youth friendly, to be thinking about what life is like for younger people coming into the labour market, and to make sure that those processes and practices are really open, transparent and fair for young people.
The problem is, though, if you're paying, because the minimum wage has risen, so if you're paying the same salary and you've got a choice between somebody who's had 5 years retail experience and somebody who's had no retail experience, but you're paying them roughly the same amount of money, if not exactly the same amount of money, I know what I'd do. I'd want less training. I'd want to know that that person was used to getting up at a certain time, was used to the workflow, was used to working with team members. I'd go for the more experienced person. You would too, wouldn't you?
Well, we do see some employers doing that, but we also see some employers proactively doing lots of really positive things for young people, because they recognise and see that that is their future talent pipeline and they need to look after it. But I think the point is here that, we are hearing from businesses they are under pressure, and it really means that we have to ensure that we have good labour market policy that is taking into account what's happening in the youth labour market, and ensuring that we can support employers to put their best foot forward when it comes to young people.
So you're not talking about forcing employers to take inexperienced young people?
I think we have to work with employers. I think that's really important. And certainly employers that we work with and talk to absolutely do recognise the value that young people bring to their businesses. They're also telling us that it's hard at the moment, that business is hard in a challenging economy. But they are looking to do more. They are looking for advice and help out there. And there's lots of good advice and help out there that businesses can access from organisations like Youth Employment UK, and our organisation at Youth Futures Foundation. We are undertaking trials with employers. We are wanting to test particular interventions to see if they work for employers and for young people, and that's going to help us to make the business case to lots of employers to know what works and to encourage more young people to be coming into their workforce.
Would you support lowering the minimum wage for young people if it meant more of them got into work?
I think it's a balance here, because we want young people to be in good work, but we also need to ensure that we are doing as much as we can to create an environment where businesses are open and positive about taking young people. And what we really need to do here is follow the evidence. At the moment, there isn't any real evidence that the minimum wage in particular is affecting hiring. But what you do hear and see from business is that there's a combination of a few things: the combination of the minimum wage, the combination of national insurance increases, all against the backdrop of a weakened labour market, are putting businesses under pressure. And so they are a little more hesitant. So we do have to be aware of that when we're thinking about solutions.
Good to speak to you. Thank you very much indeed. Sarah Young there, who is Deputy CEO of the Youth Future Foundation. Back in a sec.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it is Petrie, and as I said to you, coming up at midnight for the Talkback hour, we will be discussing this particular case. The Court of Appeal is set to review the apparently lenient sentences handed to 3 teenage boys for the rape of 2 schoolgirls in Hampshire. The defendants, aged 14 and 15, received youth rehabilitation orders at Southampton Crown Court after the judge sought to avoid criminalising the children unnecessarily, as he said it, citing their learning difficulties and mental health conditions. The attacks, which were filmed and shared online, sparked widespread public outrage. Critics condemned the punishment as unduly lenient, prompting the Attorney General to officially refer the case for review. Now, just to be clear about this, 2 of the boys were found guilty of the rape, and a 3rd boy was found guilty of supporting it, basically, and putting stuff online, being there and encouraging the rape and egging them on. So here to discuss this case with me is Marcus Johnston, who is a Managing Director of PCD Solicitors, who specialises in criminal defence for those accused of sexual offences. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. First of all, let's get the nuts and bolts out of the way, and that is about the process of the Court of Appeal. What happens next?
Well, there'll be a hearing. Now it's been referred by the Attorney General to the Court of Appeal, and essentially the Court of Appeal will need to decide whether the sentence is unduly lenient. If they decide it isn't, then it remains the same. In fact, they can decide that they're not going to hear the case, but it seems to me that it's likely that they will hear the case and decide that it's going to be unduly lenient, and they can then substitute a different sentence. So they can sentence any available sentence that the original court had available to that court. So it could be a custodial sentence, a detention sentence, if they thought that was the correct decision.
And in doing so, what is the process that they'll be looking at? I mean, presumably they have to look at the judge in this case to see how he mitigated this. They would have to look at what was available to the judge, what he chose and what he didn't choose, but also government recommendations.
There is a complicated process to go through. The complicated process for any adult going through a criminal court case, particularly for a rape allegation, which carries up to life imprisonment. So it's the most serious sexual offence. So the courts have a great deal to look at. The lawyers will spend a lot of time looking at the sentencing guidelines and any mitigation, aggravating factors. But it's more so with children. It's extremely difficult with children because the starting point is not to send a child to prison. The starting point is not to criminalise a child. But things have changed dramatically over recent years. When I think back, even when I was 30 years ago when I was first practising, we didn't see anything like the problems we now see within society with children committing crimes. When I was 14, I try to remember what I was doing, probably playing on the park with a catapult or something. Now you've got kids who are 11, 12, 13 years old committing the most horrendous offences. And in fact, I often have this conversation with people I'm chatting to, because my life as a lawyer has changed a lot. The clients I have changed a lot. I'm spending more and more of my time now talking to parents of my clients, because my clients are often children themselves. That was unheard of 15, 20 years ago. But a lot of those young people now are accused of committing very, very serious sexual offences, very serious offences. And I think a lot of it's to do with online. There's a lot of online problems, and it leads to other types of offending. And so the courts, when the courts are looking at a case such as this, and I think this case went on some 5 weeks or so, involving experts and reports and the background and the personal mitigation of the people accused. So there is a great deal of detail to go through. It's quite a difficult task for the judge, for any judge involved in the case, because they've got to uneasy situation that they've got to balance the need to punish somebody who deserves punishing, but on the other hand, the law and the guidelines, everything says to them, all the documentation says, don't send this person to prison, do everything possible not to send this person to prison.
Is it not possible, Marcus, for a judge to use common sense? They have a lot of leeway in choosing the sentencing. What baffles me completely in this case is that this judge sat in front of these three boys, first of all said, I don't want to criminalise them, which has offended so many people in this country because they criminalise themselves by carrying this out. And secondly, praised them for being able to sit still through the court process. It is at the very least tone deaf, but also, as you rightly said, this is a heinous crime and it is not accepted in society. And so why wouldn't the judge say to himself even, crikey, I better be careful here because this is the rape of two little girls in two separate occasions, meticulously planned by these boys, filmed, and then the girls' anonymity was stolen from them, and yet we're protecting the boys. Is there no part of a judge's brain that would be able to put those things together?
Well, you would think so, or you would hope so. And in most cases, we don't hear about these decisions. This one's made the press because it's so unusual.
Because it's so unusual, yeah.
And I think that's what everybody is struggling to grapple with is how did the judge come to this decision? Maybe there's something that went on within that case that we on the outside just do not know about yet. But when we look at the facts and what we know has happened so far, what's been reported, it does seem extraordinary that a period of detention was not imposed for these three young individuals. Yes, there were 13, 14 and 14 at the time of the offences, which adds to the complications because under 15, there is a very, very strong presumption against imposing a custodial sentence.
But a crime is still a crime. A rape is still a rape. Doesn't matter what age.
It is. Although there are, one of the factors the court will look at, the judge will look at is, well, what type of rape? And that sounds horrendous, sounds peculiar to even raise that as a point, but they will look at what type of rape. To give you an example, I've dealt with a number of cases where you might have 12, 13, 14-year-old children involved, the complainant, the victim, and the defendant. They may know one another, they may be experimenting sexually, and they have sex. And then the girl says, well, look, I didn't consent to that. And there's an allegation of rape and it goes...
But that is not the case in either of these cases.
It's not. But that's just the other end of the scale where I think to some extent we can partly understand where a judge, and I've had cases where a judge in that situation have said, look, this doesn't need for this person to go to prison for a long time. It's a different scenario. This, however, from what we know of this case, is completely different. And I agree with everything you've said, in that if we look at the aggravating factors, and if you compare that to the sentencing guidelines, for example, that the court would have gone through, it almost lists them word for word that have applied in this case.
Yeah.
I've run through them.
Was it a weapon used as well?
It was force used, of course. Yeah. Was there a knife that was used? It was recorded, it was put on social media. There was a number of attackers, 2/3 attackers. There was planning involved. One of them, I think there was also a conviction for indecent images of children, a separate offence. There were a number of rapes. One of the defendants was convicted of 6 individual rapes. On one of the girls. There's 2 separate victims at different times. So when we look at the aggravating factors, they're pretty much all there.
Yeah.
And then the judge is deciding, well, what is the personal mitigation? And I think this is where we really start to lose sight of common sense as a society now. It's sort of gone the other way, where we're almost doing everything possible not to criminalise people now, not to punish people now. I've spoken a number of times for certain types of offences, including sexual offences. It's almost impossible to go to prison now for committing offences.
I mean, it just would. You might as well. This judge might as well have said it's okay to rape a child if you're a child. He might as well have just passed that thing. But the thing is, though, as a defender of if you had been defending these boys in this case. You yourself would have used some of those mitigations, wouldn't you? With the ADHD, the low IQ, would you not have tried to have got the judge to have sympathy for them?
Yes, I mean, there's a difference between if you're defending somebody. If somebody says, I'm not guilty because of X, Y, Z reason, for example, they may have said, well, this was all consensual. If there is an arguable defence to it, that's where there's a defence put forward. And if a client says to me, I've got this defence, I did not do this because of this reason, and they're adamant that's their defence, then they're entitled to put that defence forward, and the prosecution are entitled to prosecute that case, and the judge decides. If somebody's entering a guilty plea or if somebody's convicted, then it's a case of mitigation. So if somebody said to me, look, I've committed this offence, what do I do? How do I avoid prison? Can I avoid prison? How do I mitigate it down? Then again, as a lawyer, we're duty bound to do the best we can for that particular client. And we're looking at what are the mitigating circumstances. Now, a large part of it with people going through serious crimes, serious offences and going to court, particularly children, is there will be expert reports to look at their mental ability. And this takes us into a complicated area now, because when you look at most, certainly from my experience, most child defendants, and I hesitate there because in fact when I think back, probably most adult defendants who commit serious sexual offences have got some mental problems going on, clearly by the very nature that
by the nature of carrying out the crime.
Offences. There's something not quite right within their thinking skills. And so it does seem peculiar when the judge almost treats it as a mitigating factor that they've got a low IQ, or they've got ADHD, or they've got some kind of learning disability. You know, there are lots of people, I think you alluded to this earlier, lots of people that have ADHD who would never in a million years think of committing a crime, would never commit anything like this. And I don't think it's an excuse. It's not a reason for committing these offences.
No, it's a real pivot point. I think this case, Marcus, and let's hope the Court of Appeal do the job that they are there to do. Thank you very much indeed for joining me, Marcus Johnston, there, Managing Director of PCD Solicitors. So that's going to be our conversation come midnight. But stay where you are because Amy.
Across the UK on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good evening. This is Talk and this is Petrie. And of course, in an hour's time coming up, it's your chance to talk back. And I have not finished talking about this story, I can tell you that. And that is that now we know that the Court of Appeal is to decide if the teenage rapist's sentence were in fact unduly lenient. Now, they don't have to do that. What they do is they look at a whole spreadsheet of stuff. They decide whether the judge was unduly lenient. So they look at all the guidelines, all the sentencing guidelines. They will look and see what was available to the judge, what he chose, what he didn't choose. But what he should have done is choose his words a little more wisely, in my view. I mean, the whole deliberation, it just absolutely infuriated me, saying things like, I don't want to criminalise these children. Well, I'm sorry, they may in law be children, but what they did is not childish. It is the most heinous and adult of crimes. And it wasn't accidental. It wasn't a couple of kids drunk at a party. These boys planned these rapes. 2 separate girls, 2 separate occasions and 2 separate destinations. They planned it, they executed it, and then they filmed it, and then they put that on social media, denying those victims anonymity. The anonymity that we have given them. They are completely anonymous. We know nothing about them apart from that it was in Hampshire and they are from the traveller community. That's all we know. They have been given complete and utter anonymity. Also, they got youth orders, what they called YROs, for 3 years. 3 years of being observed. And the judge praised them for being good boys in court and sitting still, which, if they had ADHD, as bad as they said they had ADHD, presumably they wouldn't have been able to sit as calmly and quietly as they were able to during 5 weeks of the trial. They also denied that they'd done it. They put those girls through the rape again. Cross-examination. They had to prove that they were raped by these boys, even though there was video footage, rather than the boys have to prove that they didn't do it. They just said, we didn't do it. And so they put the girls through that trauma again and again and again. And those cross-examinations would not have been favourable to those girls. We know that. They'd have been accused of all sorts of behaviours and all sorts of, you know, were you drinking? Did you do this? What were you wearing? All of that absolute nonsense. I was going to swear. So the Court of Appeal are now going to look at this. But the mitigations that were used, ADHD, low IQ, is that ever a good enough excuse? I mean, you may have people in your life with ADHD, right? It does not make them rapists. I think it does people with ADHD a complete disservice to suggest that because you've got ADHD, you didn't know what you were you didn't know you were raping. And one of them got what was convicted of 10 rapes, 10 separate rapes on these 2 girls. Oh, I've got ADHD. I didn't know what I was doing. One of them even suggested he didn't know what consent was. Consent had nothing to do with this anyway. It wasn't even remotely a consensual issue. This was a brutal attack and rape of these girls by 2 boys. They were outnumbered. One of them had a knife on one of the occasions and cut her clothes off her. So those girls went through this 3 times. Once when it actually happened. Twice when it was put on social media. and they were called slags and accused of having threesomes by the people viewing this. And then a third time when they went to court. And how were they rewarded? What did they get? Nothing. They didn't even get support, really. Victims never do. But those perpetrators got off scot-free. And what is the message that is sending to other people? As far as I'm concerned, it says it's okay to rape a girl of 13 or 14 if you're a boy of 14 or 15. It's okay. You can do that. Because it's not criminal. You're not a criminal if you rape a little girl if you happen to be under the age of 16. That's the message. You do no time, nothing will happen to you, everything's fine. So I want to hear from you about this. Give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Those calls are charged at the national rate, but we do call you back. And text the word talk and your message to 87222. I can't believe this even happened, although part of me can. So much for halving the amount of violence against women and girls in this country in the next 10 years. What with sentences like that? You've got to be joking. Well, with me to discuss this and to have a look through the front pages is the fabulous Amy Fisher, former Director of Comms for the Conservative Party.
Hello.
What do you... I mean, I am incandescent about this, and I know a lot of the public are. And this only really came to light, this entire case, because of the appalling sentences. Yeah. Why didn't we know about this before as well? But anyway, what's your take on it?
I mean, it's all just absolutely horrendous. All of it's horrendous. But one of the bits that, which you've just touched on, that really sort of particularly upset me, and obviously upset a lot of other people, was, you know, the way the judge was talking about, you know, not wanting to criminalise the perpetrators, being sort of worried about affecting their life chances. What about the victims' life chances? So not even, again, as you've just described, how they were put through the horror of the court case and having to go through it all again and sort of prove that this had happened to them, but what about the impact on them over the next year, 2 years, you know, 10 years, 20 years? It just seems so clearly unbalanced of where the concern of the justice system, or this particular judge, seemed to be weighted in this case. That he was more concerned, you know, with the perpetrator sort of life chances, and, you know, the fact that these girls have been through this and will be affected by it for the rest of their lives. I mean, let's just be really clear about this, you know, particularly heinous rapes, and whether they will, obviously I hope that they do have the support that they need and they are able to sort of move past it in some way, but they're never going to forget it, irrespective of, say, of the awful experience they've had during...
that's them scarred for life.
That's right, that's them scarred for life. So I think that for me that was one of the, well, there's no point trying to say that particularly upsetting aspects, because it's all horrible and awful. I think one of the things that I've picked up in Tuesday's papers were, aside from this, what seems to be very egregious, unduly lenient sentence from this judge, there has been some examination of other judgments that he's made, and
he's been referred before.
Relatively recent past as well. We're not talking, you know, back in a decades-long career. There's been one or two incidents. We're talking literally in the last year or so. Again, in sex offence cases, he's been referred. So I think there are certainly questions there about this particular judge. And then just as a third point from that your last caller, Marcus, your last guest, Marcus, said when he almost said it, he was in the middle of sort of talking about the processes of this particular case and explaining how this would run. And then he said, actually, but these days I'm almost finding that I'm speaking to as many parents of clients as I am kind of actual clients themselves, because such is the nature of that children seem to be doing just much more horrendous things, which was, well, to then of your point, if we're sending out the signal that, you know, if you're a teenage boy and you want to do something like this and film it, well, you're going to get, I mean, is this even a slap on the wrist?
Not really. No,
you know, a youth
it's not.
rehabilitation
And
order,
they are completely anonymous.
They're completely anonymous. You know, again, you said there's these things that sort of, you know, they're praised by the judge for having, quote, done very well during the trial, for how they'd sort of conducted themselves and all of this kind of, the whole thing is not just lacking in its tonality and common sense. It's perverse. It's actually even worse than lacking common sense. It seems so just perverse as to what any right-thinking person should have been the outcome.
The government need to take some responsibility for this as well, because there's no doubt under Lammy and under Keir Starmer, they are, the guidelines that are going forward to these judges fit into this category. And I was really angry yesterday. I was saying, look, don't be fooled. These are all, they are being hypocrites about this. In fact, where is Lammy? I haven't even heard him speak on this.
Well, he's obviously quite recently been talking about sort of not lowering even the age of criminal responsibility.
Raising it, from 10.
Raising it, so making it, raising it, apologies, which again just seems sort of bonkers. Now, look, the point with the guidelines is they were introduced some 20 years ago so that you wouldn't have sort of essentially regional disparities, that you wouldn't have...
But we know this government is keen on not having people going to...
I was not about to make some defence here for the guidelines. I was just merely saying I can sort of get on board with that. But everything that this government has subsequently done, and with regards to some of the messages it seems to have sent out to the Sentencing Council, when the Sentencing Council have sort of floated ideas about what could be other sort of mitigating circumstances. I want to say they were talking about like low income could become a mitigating circumstance in criminal case. I mean, that's bonkers, because that's what's also, by the way, that's basically saying, oh, if you're poor, we kind of think you're criminal,
more likely to be a criminal.
Which is actually incredibly insulting to anybody who's on the sort of minimum wage or whatever. So, no, at every level, this is horrible. And yes, for a government that has wanted to make such a virtue of, you know, really pushing forward on the VAUG, the violence against women and girls agenda, this is running a coach and horses through it, and one can only hope that now this process of the sentence going up for some type of review will end up where I think the vast majority of people think it should have been in the first place.
The thing is, though, do we have to recalibrate how we think about children? Because that was one of the sentences that as in speech sentences as opposed to criminal sentences, that really offended me, was when he said, I don't want to criminalise these children. Now, when you use the word child, I don't think of a strapping 15-year-old
who's
boy
committing rape,
right? That's not a childish thing to do.
You know, a sort of childish prank that got out of hand.
Exactly.
Or sort of, you know. I mean, this is one of the most adult crimes,
without a shadow of a doubt,
in one of the most violent ways. Then with the premeditation, then the fact it was repeated, the fact it was recorded. I mean, there's no element of child.
There's no exactly that. And I just with as well with Marcus Johnston there saying earlier on, saying, well, look, you know, I'm seeing more children doing these terrible things. Do we need to recalibrate as a nation and stop, in a sense, infantilising and mollycoddle the youngsters who are capable of adult crimes? Because these are, you've got them stabbing each other, that's an adult crime. You've got rape, which is on the increase.
I mean, this isn't
it's an adult crime.
This isn't, you know, this isn't something that went wrong.
No.
That sort of went wrong.
It was planned and executed.
They went out and made it happen. So no, I'm you know, yes, I think we are at the stage where, you know, we got. I find it again, and yes, we know nothing about them, but I find it very difficult to sort of conceive of a 15-year-old. I'm going to say young man. to have that image in my head of a 15-year-old in front of me who I know has committed this rape.
15-year-olds are big, right? I mean, they're not little children.
This is what I mean. And for them to somehow be conceiving as that young man as a child, the two it feels oxymoronic. Do you know what I mean? Like a child is not capable of kind of this adult crime. We're talking about a violent sex act.
Yeah.
This isn't childish curiosity. This isn't a childish prank that's gone out of hand. This is an accident. There's
nothing childish about it, and that's why I wonder if we've got to as a society recalibrate what a child is,
or at least what we're thinking that people of a certain age are capable of.
Yeah.
I don't wish to kind of try and desanitise, the language, but that is what we're talking about. We're talking about 15-year-olds who did this. They are not acting in a quite literally childish fashion, quite
and
the
they're
opposite.
Built like men at 15 as well. They're big, they're tall. When you say I don't want to criminalise these children, I sort of have the image of a 6-year-old wearing his school blazer.
Yeah, with their socks pulled up and some conkers in their short pockets.
Exactly.
We're not talking about that.
But that's where I'm saying that the language that this judge used is so wrong. It just gets sent out entirely the wrong image, entirely the wrong impression. I don't want to criminalise these children. Right. It's the wrong language.
I suspect this might become...
I think this is a pivot point.
This one of those seminal cases to this point around what are young people that we are calling children capable of, because it's sort of 30 odd years on from the James Bolger case, the horrific 1990s when 2 very young boys took away the toddler and then murdered him, and then that very much sort of concentrated minds there about what we think of as criminality in children and what they might be capable of, and this is in the awfulness of that. And are we sure that our criminal justice system and the people working in it are calibrating things correctly? Because so many of these aspects, because it's not that there's just one thing that's wrong about this judgment here. It's sort of all of it. It's the way the judge was talking about it. As I say, it was again the repeated nature, the planning, the filming. There's so many aspects in it that are so horrible that conceiving of it, the child doing it as opposed to these 2/3 young men involved in it. It just seems so nonsensical, which is why there's been such outrage, which is why so many people are upset. And
I just hope the Court of Appeal does step up.
I mean, that could lead to some whole other problems, though. If then, well, look, we're going to have to wait and see which way they choose to make a judgment on this. But I think it's very clear where the vast majority of, as I say, sort of right-thinking people would want it to go.
Yeah. I think so as well. We'll wait and see. So that's what we're going to be talking about at midnight. Give me a call, 0344 499 1000. It's a quick break. Back with the papers in a moment.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, yes indeed, this is Talk, and it's Petrie here with you, and with me is Amy Fisher, former Director of Comms for the Conservative Party. Let's dig into the papers. The Sun newspaper going with it's 35 degrees Celsius and water chiefs moan about kids' pools being filled up.
I mean, when I saw this front page, it was literally pick a water company, any water company. It frankly could have been any of them. My first thought ran to Thames Water.
Yeah, me too.
Because, you know, that's where I live, and practically, I mean, no joke, practically, but every day there's a sort of, you know, burst pipe somewhere. I mean, not infrequently, I'm going to say once every 4 or 5 months, there just won't be any water when I sort of get up in the morning, and you're sort of quite lucky if it's back on within a couple of hours. But certainly this time last year, when again we had another sort of similar heat wave, you know, you got sort of 2 very begrudging bottles of water delivered round to you, which was a bit like, well, this is great because it's now sort of been 26 hours since I've had water, and I'd rather like to, you know, wash myself, all my clothes or anything. So, I mean, I think this happens to be about South West Water, have been complaining about paddling pools, but it could apply to any of them. I think pretty much actually of all the utilities companies, I think water are probably the least liked, least trusted.
Well, and also we don't have a choice. They have monopolies.
Yes,
wherever
exactly.
they are. We can't say, I can't say, you can't say, Thames is rubbish, so I'm going to switch to somebody else. We can't. We're stuck.
And there's all the huge dividends that they pay.
And the Thames water bills have just gone sky high.
In a very, very noticeable sort of way.
But this again talks about the wasted water that these water firms, because they pay dividends and shareholders, but they don't fix the infrastructure. And so this is 107 million litres of water a day lost by South West Water, and they are complaining if you fill a paddling pool.
It just seems completely topsy-turvy, as I say, that on the one hand you've got the huge salaries, vast salaries for this ward director, the huge dividends, the complete sort of mismanagement of the companies, right? I mean, what kind of company is it that just allows its basic infrastructure to be so shoddy?
Well, Thames borrowed money to give to their shareholders.
Yes.
That should be illegal.
It's called, I mean, it's as I say, it's so completely topsy-turvy. And then, you know, when the temperatures are so high, curmudgeonly, they are saying no to paddling pools. I think, you know, no one's going to read that with any great surprise. There will still be upset and annoyance bordering on fury, but no surprise.
I'm still going to have a paddling pool for my dogs.
What, you sort of pay the... I mean, are these the world's most spoiled dogs, by the way? So I'm now envisaging sort of lilos and kind of you bringing them sort of doggy cocktails type vibe.
I have got a paddling pool and I've got one of those mats that sprays water like that.
Okay.
For the dogs.
Oh, but do they like it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, Humphrey does. Bailey's a bit old now and he's a bit like, oh, can't be bothered.
No, okay.
But Humphrey's the raging mad puppy. He loves it all. He's got his own water park.
Of course he does.
Of course he does. What else am I going to do? I don't have grandchildren. I don't want grandchildren. I'd rather have a grand dog. But there you go. The Times newspaper. Social media ban will protect children from addictive features. This is obviously being it's being lost in court in America, isn't it, already? Lots of people waiting to sue as well under the addictive nature of social media. But Britain is not going to copy the Australian blanket social media ban for children, which allegedly isn't really working either. About 60% of the children in Australia have found a way around it. Of course they have. But these are bans on specific features like the infinite scrolling. Yeah. But will that affect everybody? Because I'll be pretty annoyed by that.
No, so look, it's not quite clear to me how this ban would actually work. So that we're not all
we're not being treated like children.
There's that. There sort of seems to be a bit of a lack of clarity from Labour about the timing as to how to introduce. I entirely agree with all of the sentiment. I actually sort of believe that the government does realise this is something that needs to be acted on. I'm just not clear on how any of the practicalities are going to work. And look, the other two realities are it's going to have to be pretty smart, otherwise we'll just see what's happened in Australia, which is kids will find a way around it. They're kind of clever like that. And my other point, having worked at Google some 20 years ago, I still don't think. Look, we just should be still keeping absolute pressure on the social media platforms themselves to stop creating this stuff that we now know is so dangerous. Or to build in, as opposed to now, we're basically trying to stuff the genie back in the bottle, right? Which is going to be near on impossible. But I still don't think the media companies are in any way really truly fronting up to the onus that should be on them is to build safeguards in the products before they're released.
Yeah.
And that
not
is
try
just
and
not
bolt something on later.
Not just bolt something on when
But
literally
that's
the genie is already out.
Attitude with AI, isn't it? We're not protecting ourselves before
and the companies know this, and for all of their sort of warm words, when they do have these summits where they meet with the government and all the rest of it, because I used to do that when I was at in the Home Office and working on the online harms bills about 10 years ago. And it would just drive me bonkers because I would know there was actually going on within the company's headquarters. It's basically like a Wild West. All of these engineers, yes, very clever people. I'm not saying they're bad people in and of themselves, but they were basically told to go out and create all this stuff to make money. Can we not lose sight of this? And then, yes, maybe safety features come as a sort of bolt-on afterwards. I mean, it was the Mark Zuckerberg off-quoted phrase, which is, move fast, break stuff. Well, that's great, but we've now kind of broken things to such a destruction now that we really have got a whole generation of children who in very real and material ways, it's not just the kind of endless doom scrolling and therefore the lack of attention.
No, it's actually affecting their brains, isn't it?
What I mean. And so it's not just the kind of not being able to get your child to put their phone down when they need to go to bed at night. No, actually, it's having severe consequences on
speech,
mental health and relationship and societal development. So yes, I would be supportive of whatever the government thinks it's going to do. I reserve judgment until I've seen
how they're going to do it,
and when. But thirdly, let us not let any of these media companies remotely off the hook with their social and moral obligations about this.
Absolutely, I completely agree. The other story on the front of the Times says, lurch to left puts Britain at risk, Blair tells Labour, which is an interesting statement given that the Green Party is doing so well. I mean, I can understand Labour's issue at the moment. You've got the very right and the very left stealing from Labour, so that they really don't know which way to turn, do they?
No, I just sort of.
But I wish Blair would shut up and go away.
This is the thing. I had this rise one of course it's Saviour Blair.
Can't he just shut up and go and count his money?
He just obviously quite literally can't quite help himself.
He likes to be in the spotlight.
He does like to be in the spotlight. I mean, the weird thing about him, I do still find him quite compelling, if I'm honest.
Blair?
Yeah, in a way that I do think he
really annoying.
Well, I'm not saying it's without annoyance, but he does have. Is it charm? That's not quite the right word. He does have a certain slightly compelling air about him. That's quite different from me sort of necessarily appreciating, if I were Labour, this intervention, because actually you could argue that with all of these squeezes and pressures that they are facing very imminently with the Makerfield by-election coming up, and exactly what you've just described about being squeezed on the right and squeezed on the left and sort of not really know what to do in the middle. I mean, I don't see how this intervention from sort of St Tony, as he sometimes called,
I can't think of any
helps.
intervention that Tony Blair has ever done since he left office that has ever been helpful in any way whatsoever. But he can't stop sticking his beak in. Constantly.
Well, no, but can you imagine how annoyed he was when sort of Gordon Brown got invited to kind of come back onto this theme a couple of weeks ago? And he's obviously been smarting about this, and those smarts have come out in this 5,000 word sort of essay that he's produced.
Extraordinary. I've just bog off Blair, that's what I say. Just want to point out before we go to the break the fabulous photograph there of Giselle Pellico, who was raped, if you remember, by multiple men, tens of men.
As organised by her husband.
As organised by her husband, and she's addressed the Hay Festival at the weekend. Extraordinary woman who gave up her anonymity in order that the men that did that to her would face jail, because if she hadn't given up her anonymity, then the likelihood is that all of them would have skated, and she was not going to let that happen. She's an absolute feminine icon, I think. Extraordinary. Quick break, and Amy and I will be back in a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it's Petrie, and with me is Amy Fisher, a former Director of Comms for the Conservative Party. The Daily Telegraph again has Blair, Starmer has no plan for Britain. The other story, though, the other political story, is Sturgeon's motorhome story thrown into doubt. Now, this is because Peter Murrell, the party's former chief executive and former husband to the First Lady of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon, admitted to nicking £400,000 worth of SNP funds, and he spent some of the money on a luxury motorhome, which I think he parked outside his mother's house, or her.
Was it his mother? Hang on.
Was it mother-in-law or mother?
Where did he come from?
Anyway, one of them parked outside, and
was that her mother-in-law's home? So yes,
so
his
mother's
her
home,
mother-in-law.
right?
Yeah.
So a lot of questions now being asked of Nicola Sturgeon as to how much she was aware of this sudden influx of cash. Now, this man bought himself 2 new cars. One of them was a Jaguar, which was 82 grand. I think I might notice
it's not a little
Jag.
beat up runaround,
no,
is it?
No, I might notice that, unless he parked it down the street, I suppose. But also the weirdest things that he bought.
I thought this was a strange list.
It's a very strange book. He did buy his wife's book, or a couple of a copy of the book, Women Hold Up Half the Sky, selected speeches of Nicola Sturgeon. That would be a right riveting read, wouldn't it? I reckon that would be really good if you're an insomniac. To start reading the riveting speeches of Nicola Sturgeon. Maybe that's why he bought it.
Look, I haven't actually read anything of hers, but have you ever been a member of like a bad book club? So I'm a member of one where we literally buy books that we know are just going to be terribly written, and then it's
brilliant! I love that idea. That's much better.
So somebody very kindly for my birthday, and then that became the book of the month, was Michael Flatley's autobiography, which is a corker. Within about the first 2 pages, he compares himself to sort of Mandela. I mean, this is
anything by Titchmarsh. Titchmarsh, I think, especially the sex scenes, which he's won awards for the worst written sex.
I think I might have read one of his books once for that reason of it just being so excruciating. The problem with them is, though, you sort of start reading them and kind of, when some of them are so bad, it's sort of like every third line is so awful. You have to start sort of WhatsApping each other. And so it becomes impossible to actually make any progress through the book because all of it's so absolutely ghastly.
So he bought that, but this as well, 2 pairs of gold leaf gents dry touch gloves. I don't even know what that is. What is that?
Are they driving gloves of some?
No. The dry touch gloves, gold leaf, and 6 bottles of Avon Skin So Soft body spray. Were the gloves to do with the body spray?
No, but I'm thinking like dry touch driving gloves though for the Dracula. No, maybe
2 pairs of gold leaf.
One for each car.
I don't
But the sort of baffling one that the Telegraph is really highlighting there on that sidebar is like, Nicola Sturgeon, you would notice a motorhome.
You would notice outside your mother-in-law's. I think.
When I point out the other weird stuff that he's bought, like this lotion and whatever, you might not notice that, but like the 2 cars and the motorhome, you would.
Well, a £3,500 coffee machine I might notice coming into the house, and I might notice a weather gauge for a weather station and wind gauges, a 1/3 scale model helicopter from Let's Shop Airbus of Airbus Operations at 550 quid.
I mean, it's just quite strange.
An odd 2 pairs of Fit Nation socks. I mean, they might not have put that on the list.
But it also seems like he worked quite hard to spend £400,000 on this random bunch of.
It's absolutely bizarre. 2 Helly Hansen men's vests, 140 quid.
Oh, the Helly Hansen stuff is expensive. Their running gear is.
Oh, right. I wouldn't know anything about running gear. I wouldn't know anything about it. Soap baskets. What's a soap basket? 116 quid. And
what is the soap made from? Unicorn tears?
I know. Oak library ladder for £1,000. There's a very strange... but I might have noticed some of these things that were being... oh, hi, darling, I've just bought a new bread bin.
But that's so small. This is what I mean about he's working quite hard to spend all of this money, because, as I say, with the exception of the sort of motorhome and the 2 cars, it just sounds like a random collection of sort of tat.
Yeah,
expensive tat.
Oxo Good Grips egg poacher. I don't know what these things are. I'm obviously too common. I don't understand any of these things. But yeah, I mean, just the very strangest list of stuff. But he that aside, $400,000 that he nicked. He's gonna go down, isn't he?
Yes, he will.
He's gonna go down. I wonder how long he'll get for that. But Nicola Sturgeon, of course, they're saying she has to answer how she didn't know. how she didn't notice.
Yes, and it's all just all so weird and embarrassing.
We've got a new motorhome and 2 new cars.
You know, and they were, you know, the sort of darlings of, you know, the Scottish nationalists, chatterati, glitterati, and then, you know, talk about sort of falls from graces entirely of his own making.
Yeah, well, she made a quick, swift decision to divorce him, didn't she?
She cut the ties there quickly.
Yeah, very quickly. The Eye, Britain at risk of becoming irrelevant, says irrelevant Tony Blair, turns on Labour rivals. The Daily Mirror, the right decision, teen rapist case review, top judges will review controversial decision. Prime Minister above said it was clearly the right outcome. The courage of the girls to come forward is humbling, and yet there's all the stuff that they're doing with criminals, and saying that people under the age of 25 shouldn't be imprisoned. It's just
and early release schemes.
And early release schemes, yeah, violent people are being held out. The Daily Express. I'm surprised they didn't go with a whole front page on the weather, because they do like a weather story, don't they? Hottest May Day ever as mercury hits 35. I tell you what is heartbreaking about this weather is you always get it, and that is those young people that die going into open water.
Teenagers now, and then an older gentleman in his 60s. Yeah, absolutely awful. And you're right, it's the kind of depressing familiarity of those stories. That mid-afternoon over bank holiday, a couple of kids would have gotten themselves into trouble. So yes, I agree, that's very much the downside of.
Apparently it's the coldness of the water is one of the factors in open water in lakes and things like that. And I remember certainly when I was a kid, I used to swim in a lake in Gloucestershire with my aunt, my great aunt. And you'd be swimming along and you'd suddenly hit a patch of really cold water. Really cold. I mean, it must be because the water's depth, sudden depth. Because but you'd be swimming along nicely and then suddenly get this. But if you're jumping into that and you're really hot outside and you jump into this very cold water, it can really cause you a lot of physical problems. But the proper headline there is "Step Up Keir to Stop Kids Dying." A grieving mum urged Keir Starmer to act now on social media restrictions for under 16s. Big story there. Some of the parents don't want them to act too quickly and do the wrong thing.
Well, this is what I mean. There's a real act in haste, repent at leisure, because it's going to be so complicated.
It really is.
That if you sort of fire the gun and get it wrong, you've created a whole other set of problems for yourselves. Because as we were just saying, this was always going to be the problem, as Australia found, and with any regulation here. If you've got kids trying to get around the restrictions, they will find a way.
They will.
And then suddenly have you found yourself in the sort of known but unintended consequence of them using...
Of it getting worse.
Going to dodgier sites, you know, going through VPNs and all of this kind of thing, and actually you've pushed them through the illegality of what they were used to into a whole other scary... cesspit that is even more unregulated and even more terrifying. I mean, that's the worry, right? If you're literally forcing people to go on dark web and this kind of thing and access things.
No, you're absolutely right. They could really make it a lot worse rather than any significant improvement. Let's take a quick break, but Amy and I'll be back in a moment.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie, and with me is Amy Fisher, former Director of Comms for the Conservative Party. The FT for tomorrow. BP unseats Manifold as chair after serious concerns over his conduct. I found this quite interesting actually today. I'm not normally given to be looking at BP and what they do with their management team, but they brought him in because he was a ball breaker.
Well, they broken one too many.
He'd broken one too many, and they've said that he has a volcanic temper.
Yes.
And was not only shouting at the underlings, which they probably wouldn't have minded so much about, but was throwing his weight around and losing his temper with seniors, and they just went no. Despite the fact we're unstable,
so
get rid of him.
Exactly? I mean, it has impacted the share price today. It was sort of in the immediate aftermath news. It sort of went down by about 9%. It's gone back up a bit, but had a very immediate downward pressure. What I sort of found interesting about this was, I think genuinely it is a sort of Trumpism thing, but the companies seem to be going back to kind of being okay with some of the more, shall we say, bombastic, tough stance of senior people if it was quite literally yielding dividends. Do you know what I mean? The pendulum,
absolutely, it swung back.
It swung kind of back. So then the fact that BP have acted with such alacrity over this guy, and you know, all of the reports seem to be pretty true, so, you know, sources have confirmed or whatever, that yes, he was just a very bullying is the word that's being used. I mean, how bad must it have been?
That's what I was thinking. It really must have been horrendous, this shouty style, but they did actually bring him in because of his style. So and they've switched a few of these top jobs recently, so that's why the markets aren't happy with it.
I think he's then been replaced by somebody he then brought in as well as his sort of number two. So there's a whole sort of
I mean, it just looks like they can't run it properly, doesn't it? But they would rather get rid of him.
The scale of BP. So yes, this is what I mean. Like, how bad must it have been for them to go, okay, we brought this guy in for a specific purpose and a specific title to, you know, make tough decisions and all of this kind of thing. And we know that we're not sort of in the most stable of place, well, as kind of anywhere is at the moment. But no, he's so bad. This isn't one or two junior people crying in the loo at lunchtime.
No.
He's got to go.
But you're right, though. I mean, I used to work at a company where, I mean, the boss there literally pushed me up against a wall and got so close to my face, shouting at me because I'd had the audacity to go and see the boss above him when the boss above him asked to see me. And he was literally spitting in my face. And this guy was very well known as an absolute psychopath. I mean, a proper absolute psychopath, and was a bully and vile to just about everybody, but he was best friends with the HR manager.
Well, this is the thing.
So he got away with it for years.
Yeah, sometimes, so look, in sort of politics and, you know, journalism, where obviously I've spent, you know, a couple of decades of my career, as have you. You know, there are a number of these people about who do have these, they don't, like, it's not just that they have these reputations, they do actually do kind of mad stuff like that. And yet they somehow do seem to manage to survive for years and years and years. And we all kind of know who, well, not kind of, we all sort
this
of
guy's
do
well
know
known in the business.
Who they are, and they just sort of carry on, either because they have got, you know, sort of friends in high places,
that's exactly what happened.
they are valued for what they deliver kind of in their job above and beyond any sort of personal management style. So yes, that again, as I said, it speaks to the point of how bad must this guy have been for BP to have gone, no, actually even he, like, there's a line that even we can't tolerate him crossing.
And like you said, they did it quickly, and they seem to all be in total agreement about it as well. The Morning Star. All right, why not? The Morning Star says courts are degrading Britain's right to protest. I think that is a fair statement?
Yes. So we have had some big debates about this quite recently. A couple of weekends ago, there were a couple of very big marches. There was a sort of pro-Palestinian freedom was literally happening in London on exactly the same day as, you know, Tommy Robinson kind of far right march, and the police took quite stringent measures there. So yeah, I think it's a debate that we do need to be alive to, but with that balance of, well, look, it is somebody's freedom of speech where it's an impinging upon somebody else's safety. You know, that's where the balance is. And that,
I think we have to give people the right to say exactly what we don't want them to say.
Of course.
I will stand by that. But I agree with you that I mean, I think the police did a good job.
I think
that.
I was
they
quite
managed
surprised
to both.
That more didn't.
Yeah.
Both went ahead.
Yeah.
There were a few of the inevitable arrests,
Yeah.
but it didn't topple over into what could have been, you know, real mass.
I mean, they
unrest.
seem to have planned that really well at huge public expense, of course. Let's have a look at this fabulous photograph in Vaseline on the lens of The Independent of my favourite person, Tony Blair. There we go. I mean, there's definitely Vaseline on that lens of that camera, right?
Oh, he's giving it the doe-eyed, you know, Tony Blair hand of history.
It's just something so creepy about it. It just annoys me. I mean, it's the fact that he didn't annoy me when he was Prime Minister, particularly.
No, I mean, he was very charming and charismatic on occasions.
But there's something about him now, it's just like, oh, look, it's like that guest at the end of the party when you're trying to clear up.
Look, you've all had a lovely time.
You've all had a lovely time. Now, bog off.
Everybody's liked lasagna. You've had brilliant compliments on your, you know, sort of tiramisu that you made as well. Everybody bought lovely bottles of Malbec, which have now all pretty much been drunk. As I say, everyone's like, now please, just, I want to go to bed.
Go home.
Like, this is
and
done
he's
here.
that person.
No, I do know
that
what
is still
you
going,
mean.
oh, is there another scotch in the offing?
And another thing. No, I do.
And then you come
know
down
what
in your nightdress and your dressing gown, and they're still there. No, that's what he is. He's the political version of that.
You know, he was Prime Minister, and then since then he obviously set up the Tony Blair, you know, Foundation for Solving the World's Ills. But you know, he's just kind of
hasn't
not
solved anything, though, has he?
He's not kind of being able to let go of the fact he's not Prime Minister anymore.
I know. Just honestly, just take the hint, mate. Just go. The Metro, my bro's 7-month in Dubai hellhole. Family say they don't know why Ryan, 27 years old, is in jail. The family of a British dad who claims he's been tortured in a Dubai jail is begging the government to find out why he was arrested and help free him. That's a pickle, isn't it?
The story sounds awful. There's not a lot of detail as to literally why or.
How can he not know why he's in prison?
I mean, I think the sort of broader point about this is that it's a salutary reminder that, you know, Dubai, of the skyscrapers and the sort of tax-free shopping and the supercars and this wonderful influencer, glitzy life where everyone's beautiful. Actually, you know, in some of these places there is a sort of far darker reality behind the sort of Instagram stories.
Yeah, indeed, and human rights is definitely one of them that we ignore because they've got so much money, a bit like China. Right, The Guardian. Alan Davies. I love Alan Davies. I think he's great. I do. I really am a big fan. Valentine, anyway, he said there were bad moments and bad behaviour. Oh, I say. Russia relentlessly targeting UK infrastructure, the spy chief warns. I don't think there's any great surprise.
No, so this is the head of GCHQ will be giving a lecture on Wednesday, which, yes, I don't think any of us are going to be very surprised that Russia is up to this.
No, and that's an extraordinary photograph, isn't there? That's from the Millennium Bridge in London. So that's St Paul's, isn't it? On the other side is the Tate,
which is the one that also sort of slightly melts and kind of moves in the heat.
Yeah, that's the one that they opened and then it wobbled too much. The wobbly bridge, but it looks like it could be. I mean, I thought it was Italy.
Yes.
When I first saw that picture, but everybody's got there's brollies. People are walking around with brollies, or are they sun brollies? I don't know, but it's definitely. They're saying that the heat is still on for a record broken for the second day running. It is supposed to be dropping tomorrow.
Mild 27 degrees.
A mild
or so.
27
Still
degrees.
got a very hot night tonight, of about 18 degrees in London it's going to be, so...
Oh, it's going to be chilly in my bedroom. There you go.
I think you should be emphasising this. I don't think you're going to have a lot of sympathy.
Little jumper on when I get home, I think. Yeah, but it's going to be horrible. Hot. Until I think it's another week, isn't it?
It is, because actually after tomorrow, there's then going back up to about 29.
29, yeah, and
again,
then
so
back down again, and then back up again, and then raining at the weekend, but hot.
Yes, so no real respite basically, and sort of everywhere's sold out of ice cream and ice. And it's all a bit miserable. And everyone's rushing to try and buy a fan now. They didn't plan in the winter when they were on sale. And they're all sold out everywhere.
You've been looking as well.
Yes.
Oh dear. Well, listen, I hope you managed to stay. I think Amy's going to want to stay in the studio.
This has been delightful. This
and go to sleep
literally been the most comfortable temperature I've been for about 3 days.
Well, listen, bring a sleeping bag and you're welcome. Amy Fisher, thank you.
Thank you.
Back in a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and a very good morning to you. It is Talkback. This is your hour where you get your voice heard and listened to. So this is your chance to do exactly that, to talk back. And I haven't finished talking, but I did talk about this yesterday, but it was in the afternoon, and I wanted to talk to you guys about it because I'm almost, ridiculously speechless about this rape sentencing of these three boys. To be clear, there were three, and the two were found guilty of rape. One of them was actually convicted of 10 separate rapes against these two girls. The teenagers were given youth rehabilitation orders and walked out of court with 10 rape convictions between them. So one of them, I think, was 6 or 7 times, and the other one was a few fewer times. But nonetheless, 2 boys, 10 rapes, and no time. No time. I mean, no justice, really. Where is the justice in this? And what message is this sending out? The initial sentences were youth orders, youth rehabilitation orders. Youth rehabilitation orders. I don't even know what they are, but they don't sound very significant, do they? Anyway, it's now been referred to, the Attorney General has now asked the Court of Appeal to review the case of the 3 teenagers who avoided jail over the rape of 2 girls. And let's make no mistake about this. They planned this. This was not, you know, some fumble gone wrong at a party where alcohol was involved. These were planned by these boys. They executed the plan. They raped these 2 girls on 2 separate occasions in 2 separate places. They filmed these rapes, and then they put the film, part of the films, onto social media. So they stole not just innocence from these girls or their futures, but they also stole their anonymity, and victims in these kind of sex cases are afforded anonymity unless they waive it. But these girls had no choice. They were exposed quite literally on social media. They were called slags. They were, you know, accused of having threesomes while they're being raped. And one of the boys had a knife and cut the clothes off one of the girls. So there was a weapon involved as well. So this was premeditated, violent rape against 2 little girls. And yet this judge said, I don't want to criminalise these children. Now, I really object to the term child being used in this context. And I suppose in legal terms, they're not adults, right? But when you say child, it conjures a picture of a child, right? Not a 15-year-old strapping great big bloke. So I don't want to criminalise these children. First of all, they criminalise themselves by carrying out this act. And second of all, referring to them as children is really disingenuous. It's leading the jury, isn't it? Or it's leading us to look at them as children. It's trying to gaslight us into thinking of these 15-year-olds as equal children. And the other thing that I find deeply offensive is the idea that ADHD and low IQ were brought in as mitigation during the sentencing. Now, they were high enough IQ to plan and execute these rapes, which they would never have been caught for had they not put them on social media and the victims hadn't come forward. So they were clever enough to do that. They chose areas where they wouldn't be seen. In one case, it was under a bridge near a canal, and the victim thought that she was going to be killed and thrown in the canal. They were smart enough, right, to carry this all out, to film it all, and then put it on social media. I mean, if you paid me, I wouldn't know how to put something on social media. And I'm quite proud of that. But so they were smart enough to do that, and yet in mitigation, oh, it's ADHD and low IQ. That's not mitigation. How does that help the victim? And the other thing is, the victims were put through these rapes 3 times. First, when it actually happened to them. Second, when it was put on social media. And then third, when they had to go to court and justify their remarks, when they had to prove that they were not drunk, or that they hadn't asked for it, or that they weren't wearing skimpy clothes, or whatever. I don't know what went on in the court, but I can only imagine the line of questioning that these 2 young girls went through to prove that they had actually been raped, that there was no consent to any of this, even though it was filmed. So the boys refused to admit that they'd done it. All of the thing, every single thing that these boys did, they made these girls go through it again. And yet the judge has the nerve to refer to them as being children and letting them off with these youth rehabilitation orders. And I get it that with young people, in certain cases, it is not probably in the best interests of society to jail somebody, a young person, for something. But surely rape is a totally different, it's a totally different layer. It's a totally different crime. It is an adult crime. It is a heinous crime. It is not just the act itself. It is what that does to the victim for the rest of their lives. So it's not just a, you know, I don't know, a punch in the face or a car crash, or it is a deliberate act of violence against a young woman who will live with that for the rest of her lives. That doesn't fall into the category, as far as I'm concerned, as being, oh, we've got to be lenient to them because they're children. We've got to rethink, we've got to recalibrate, because young people now are committing the most heinous crimes. They're committing murders, stabbings, rape, drug dealing, all of these things. And yet we somehow infantilise them and say, well, because they're children, they didn't know any better. That simply isn't the case anymore. And I think we need to rethink what we think is a child and how we pivot the legal system to address this new breed of young person. But ADHD as a mitigating factor, I'm interested. Is that ever a good enough excuse? Can ADHD, you probably know people, I know people with ADHD. You probably know youngsters with ADHD. It's doing all of them a disservice. And to say, oh, they're low IQ, in other words, a bit thick, they still know rape's wrong, right? And that's why they chose to carry out these crimes in areas where they couldn't be seen, because they knew it was wrong. I don't think there's any question here that you didn't know it was the wrong thing to do. I don't believe that they didn't know this wasn't the right thing to do. So listen, give me a call on this. It's now going to the Court of Appeal. It doesn't necessarily mean, though, that the sentences will be changed. There's a lot that the Court of Appeal has to look at and go through and see what if this judge has been unduly lenient. He has been unduly tone deaf. He has definitely been unduly stupid with his choice of words and the way he praised these boys for being able to sit still and be well behaved during court, which, by the way, if they had severe ADHD, I would say that they wouldn't be able to do that. But the judge, in my opinion, was unduly lenient, but I'm not a lawyer, and the Court of Appeal will look at this. I think there's enough public pressure, though, that maybe they will opt for a custodial sentence for these boys. And I think that would be in the best... They've also got anonymity, don't forget. So in the area of Hampshire, these people don't know who these boys are. They don't know if their daughters are hanging out with them. They don't know what's going on, which I think also with a crime as serious as rape, anonymity goes. Men are not afforded anonymity when it comes to rape. Adult men are not afforded that. Their names are put out straight away, and in some cases to the detriment of those men because they haven't actually done anything. So I think with an adult crime like this, the very least is they lose their anonymity. They stole it from the girls. They stole those girls' anonymity. At the very least, we have to accept that 15-year-olds are not children in the sense of childish behaviour or childish crimes or whatever. It's not the same. It's not the same. I don't think so. Anyway, maybe you think I'm being a bit too harsh, but I also think there has to be an element of punishment, especially for rape. I mean, what message is this sent out to 15-year-old boys? Listen, as long as we rape a 13-year-old, we're golden. Right? Well, as long as we rape somebody in our own age group, we'll be fine. We won't even go to jail. We'll get a youth rehabilitation order, whatever that is. Cushy. They've decriminalised rape in that age group because the judge said he didn't want to turn these criminals into criminals. He didn't want to criminalise them. Well, what they did was criminal. I'm sorry, but it was. So he's basically said that a 15-year-old raping a 13-year-old didn't carry out a criminal act. That it is not criminal to rape a 13-year-old if you're 15. That's what he said. Basically, that is the message that he's given out. I don't know how these people keep their jobs. I really don't. Chris is in Epsom. Hello, Chris.
Hi, Petrie. It's been a while since we've spoken.
Yeah, it has been a while. How are you?
Well, I managed to stay awake tonight. To talk to you.
It's too hot to sleep.
My day starts at 5 in the morning.
I know.
So listen, I agree with everything you've said, but you better turn your air conditioning up a notch because I think you're going to get a bit overheated with what I've got to say.
I'll go on then.
Well, first of all, there's a message there that you've missed that judge is sending out. And that is to the next girl that gets raped, to her father, there is no justice for your little girl. And there will be a case of a father that puts the rapist in the ground.
I agree.
And I don't see, if I was sitting on a jury panel, I wouldn't find him guilty. Now, that's another message that's being sent out by this judge. But now this is the one that's really going to overheat you. This judge is following an earlier judge. An Iranian came across on small boats in June of last year. He claimed to be 14, although they thought he was older because of Labour's regulations and the new law they're bringing in. If he doesn't want to do a bone scan, they won't do it. So he was sent to a foster home and a school as a 14-year-old. 3.5 months in, he grabs a 12-year-old girl, drags her in the bushes, rapes her, films it, posts it on social media. He still won't take a bone density test. The judge gave him a youth, a youth community order, 6 months training on consent, and he's returned to the outside world. And this is where it gets even worse. He's still remaining as a 14-year-old. So the council are going to place him with another foster family. The council are under no legal obligations and are following statutory guidelines by not telling the foster family what he's done. And he's going to be sent to another school with other young girls. It's disgusting. All of it is disgusting. And I actually don't care about the ethnicity of any of these people. It is absolutely disgusting that the perpetrators of these heinous crimes are better protected. They are totally protected. And women and girls are just fed to the wolves. You know, this is... It's just so disgusting. But I do agree with you, Chris, that if justice isn't seen to be being done, that's when people take justice into their own hands. And the police and the government have only got themselves to blame if
you know, some parent does take the law into their own hands, because they cannot rely on the justice system. It is absolutely clear. Unless this is absolutely changed and measures are put in place so it never happens again, we won't trust the justice system.
I've got no faith in the justice system whatsoever in this country now. I'm 65. I do have ADHD, actually, as well as PTSD and night terrors. But I'm a responsible citizen. This is not the country that I pulled on the uniform for and went to war for.
But why is it, do we think that rape in particular appears to be being watered down? I mean, the point I was making a moment ago is saying he didn't want to criminalise these children when the act of rape is he's basically saying it is not a criminal act to rape a girl if you're 15.
Well, listen, why do you think you've not heard of the case that I just told you about? The government are issuing DMSA orders, D-notices, right? So it's not getting into the mainstream media. It's not being talked about. Unless you know where to look, you don't find the truth. And Labour have jumped on this case to review it. Herbert's done that for no other reason than for them to say, oh, look, we're doing things right.
Yeah, but that was only because of public pressure.
Yeah, they're covering up.
Yeah.
They're covering up. They're still not done anything about the national inquiry. And Harriet Herman, they brought Gordon Brown back and Harriet Herman. Gordon Brown said that those girls in the rape gang inquiries had made a lifestyle choice, and Harriet Herman supported the paedophile exchange and got them affiliated to the Civil Liberties Union.
You're absolutely right, Pi. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Back.
You're absolutely right. I mean, she has since regretted that, it has to be said. But I know, but it's just so worrying to me that there is this drive now to downgrade these incredibly serious crimes until they're absolutely almost accepted.
The Uni Party, all right, have let us down over the last 20 years.
Yeah.
We've had in the last 20 years, we've had 10 million people added to our population. Yet we've got no more prison spaces. We've got less hotels. We've got less hospital beds. All right, less infrastructure.
Yeah, they took away loads of hospital beds as well, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, do you know how many hospital beds we had at the start of the NHS?
Tell me.
380,000.
How many have we got now? About 10,000 now.
No, we've got 100,000.
100,000, but still. Yeah, I mean you're absolutely right, and you know, Blair takes responsibility for this. Boris Johnson as well. They all do. They all just thought, you know, just open the gates. It was Blair first, and the Labour first, and then they just kicked it open and left it open, and they didn't. No, look, I don't care about the people. I genuinely don't care that people are here. I care that infrastructure wasn't built up to support that. I care that there wasn't the speed at which it happened as well. That has created tensions in society. But if they'd built all the infrastructure and the doctor surgeries and the hospitals, and so we wouldn't have noticed, then it would have been fine.
Well, it would have been better, but it still wouldn't have been fine, I don't think, to be honest with you, Petrie. We're talking, I mean, we've got a major problem coming up. The Boris wave, as we call it, all right, the 3.5 million he let in while he was in office, in the next 12 months, 1.5 million of them are eligible to apply for indefinite leave to remain. Now, current Home Office figures say that they give grants 90%, all right? That's 1.3 million. That's 1.3 million on the welfare bill, because as soon as they get
not necessarily. I mean, not necessarily. I mean, they might be people who work. You don't know. They might work in the NHS, for example.
But most of them came over for cheaper jobs. They weren't coming over as engineers. Most of them weren't coming over as engineers and doctors. That was about 7%.
No, but there are lower jobs that we need in the NHS: porters, cleaners, all sorts of training and auxiliary staff, and we wouldn't have any coffee shops if people didn't work in them. We wouldn't have any garages. There's lots of jobs that people do.
Petrie, they all need homes. They all need homes. And not only that 1.3 million, maybe they came over and it was one person, they worked hard, and, good luck to them. But once they get indefinite leave to remain, they're entitled to all the benefits, housing and such like, but also they're entitled under ECHR to family reunion. So they can immediately bring a wife, a husband, children, gran and granddad. The implications of it are
but you see, the likes of Boris Johnson and all the political classes, they don't suffer any of this. In fact, they brought them all in for their mates, so they'd have cheap labour. Chris, I've got to go because I'm so painfully late to a break. I'm going to get into trouble, but it was great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for calling in. Quick break, back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, it is Talk and it's Talk Back and it's Petrie here with you. And we're talking about the case of the sentences the boys were spared custody over rape, and that's now been referred to the Court of Appeal. I'm hoping that the court get on with it really, really quickly, because the victims in this case, the girls, then aged 15 and 14, they deserve some peace, and they deserve to not have to think about this as much as they are thinking about it. I mean, I'm sure it stays with them and will stay with them for the rest of their lives, but at this intensity, and I hope they get the justice that they deserve. The two girls were raped in separate incidences in Fordingbridge, in Hampshire, in November 2024 and January 2025. So they planned these and carried them out by two 14-year-olds. Another boy, then 13, was convicted for his involvement in the second attack. And now the sentences of the boys will be referred to the Court of Appeal, but it doesn't necessarily mean that those sentences will change. They have to look at a load of things. But the families of the victims say, our hope is the initial sentence will be overturned and the correct punitive sentence handed out. We also hope that moving forward it serves to message to judges to ensure the sentence fits the crime and no excuses. The teenagers were given youth rehabilitation orders and walked out of court with 10 rape convictions between them, and they were referred to as children. and not criminal. When has it not been a criminal offence to rape somebody? Well, when has that not been a criminal offence? And when has the perpetrator of that heinous crime not been a criminal? Well, now, in modern Britain, if you're 15 or you're 14, you're not a criminal. You won't face time. It's not a criminal offence to rape a girl of 15 and 14. That's the message. And this is a country where we're saying we're going to halve violence against women and girls in 10 years. There's an epidemic of violence against women and girls. Well, it's hardly surprising, is it, really, when you're sending out a message to young thugs that they can rape girls and it's not a criminal offence. I mean, I cannot bend my brain around it. I cannot wrap my head around it at all. It is just so alien. ADHD was used in the sentencing mitigation, and one of them had a low IQ and another one had ADHD and anxiety. I don't know what that's got to do with anything. I genuinely don't know what that has got to do with planning and executing the violent rape of 2 girls. I don't know what ADHD has even got to do with it. But is it ever a good enough excuse? Gary has said it seems that every time there's a serious crime nowadays, it's claimed to be a result of mental health issues or ADHD. I think the last 2 decades have seen a change in crimes due to the internet and smartphones, and justice has to reflect the crime. These are adult crimes and the buck has to stop at the top. Governments, judges and police. Otherwise, it sends out the wrong message. Gary in Glasgow, thank you. Tristan is in Bedford. Morning, Tristan. How are you this morning?
Not too bad. How are you?
I'm good. Are you coping all right with the?
I've got some surgery coming up on the 18th of June.
Oh, no. You're a bit nervous about it?
I am a little bit, but I basically gave the, I said, well, if I'm still in pain by June the 15th, then we'll have to go forward with the surgery. But I didn't want to wait for the surgery. So I said last week after having the scan that I had, I said, well, you know, the inflammation is obviously, you know, it's got to go. So they're going to take out part of my, I have a bowel obstruction, so they're going to take out part of my bowel that's inflamed.
Oh, Lord, it's not a simple surgery then.
Well, I don't know. I've never had any part taken out before, so it's a bit all new to me, to be honest with you.
Well, listen, I'm sure these people are brilliant, and they'll know exactly how to look after you. So I'll keep my fingers crossed for you.
Yeah, I've been in contact with my specialist about it and everything like that. So I sort of, you know, I know what needs to happen and everything like that. So we just have to see. So there we go.
Well, let me know how it goes, won't you?
Absolutely. I'm sure I'll give you a call.
Give me a call. Let me know
while I'm in hospital.
Yeah, do that.
I did that last time when I had the blockage when I rung Dr. David Ball, so that's fine.
Yeah, just phone a radio station. That's what you need to do. Well, we're friends,
Absolutely.
aren't we? So it's not just a radio station. Now, it's interesting. What do you think about ADHD being used as mitigation for these?
I'm more draconian than you. I personally would have said, yeah, put them a year in a young offenders institute, and then once they hit the age, 25-year sentence. That's it. Just give them the 25-year sentence. Their life should be over. In my eyes, their life should be over. I mean, I have autism. I'm considered high functioning autistic. I don't understand how any concession should be given for anyone that has some sort of neurodivergent problem.
No.
To be honest with you, I mean, you know, I go to well, not at the moment, but I do go to the gym. You know, I work.
Yes, it's neurodivergence, isn't it? It's not a mental health condition. It's a neurodivergence.
I don't suddenly think about assaulting women.
No, I know.
I mean, and when I was younger, I never thought about assaulting girls or women. It didn't even, you know, go into my brain or into my mind. To be honest.
Of course not, because you're a normal human being, right? You're a normal bloke. I mean, these boys are clearly not fit for society, and if they didn't know that rape was wrong, then they're definitely not fit for society.
So the thing is people keep using the excuses of social media or this, that, and the other. But the thing is we're not in a situation where people just are injected with whatever they see. Think, oh my God, someone's doing that, I must do the same.
Yeah.
I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous. Going back to when I did media in college, we're talking about the hypodermic needle theory. Someone passively is injecting you for you to just automatically do something, and then because of that, that's being seen as an excuse. Same as neurodivergence is seen as an excuse. So, oh, well, you've got ADHD, you've got autism, you're a bit low IQ. So we'll say that, we'll use that as a confession and we'll give you a lesser sentence. How on earth they left the courtroom back to, and didn't actually go into jail or anything like that, or a young offenders institute, my mind boggles. It really
honestly
does.
Tristan, I'm exactly the same. It's like, what the hell, man?
What is happening to these sentences? I mean, I'm reading about different sentences that are given, and my mind is just like, my blood is boiling. I'm like, what? Where is your brain? It's like judges and brains don't mix.
But this is what I'm saying, is that the whole idea that it is not... He doesn't want to criminalise rape. Sorry? I don't get it. I mean, it is a criminal act, right?
Yeah,
raping somebody is
an adult crime.
Yeah. And yet you're saying, oh, I don't want to criminalise these children. How dare he describe them as children as well? It's really boiled my blood, that has.
It seems like it's constant, I don't know, they're like the constant activism is what it comes down to. And this constant liberal society that just, they use it to be able to push down these sentences. And they dilute it and water it down so much, for these ridiculous excuses.
You're basically legalising it. You're basically decriminalising it, at least. If you're a 15-year-old boy, 14-year-old boy, and you've seen this case and you're a wrong 'un, right? And you've seen this case, you have now been told that it is not criminal to rape a 15-year-old girl at knife point, or to plan the rape, or to film it, or to put it on social media. All of those things. It is not criminal for you to do that. That's what this judge has done.
Yes, but the other thing is as well is that, I mean, if I did something like that, my family would disown me.
Completely.
My sister would look at me as I'm absolute scum. My parents wouldn't want to know me. They would disown me. They wouldn't want to know me.
No, apparently the parents in this case burst into tears when the boys' parents burst into tears when they didn't get a custodial sentence.
I really don't know what is happening. I really don't.
I don't.
It seems like society is breaking down slowly but surely, but the people that's breaking it down is the judicial system that we have that won't impose the correct sentences and actually enforce and prosecute to the full extent of the law.
I mean, can you imagine being the coppers involved in this case as well? How disappointed they would be.
I would be absolutely disgusted, to be honest with you. I'm surprised that judge, considering they know the name, I'm surprised that there hasn't been more done, because he should be struck off the bench. I mean, this is just
well, he's been referred before for undue leniency. The Court of Appeal didn't review that case, but he was referred to the Court of Appeal. I mean, I don't think the Court of Appeal would dare say they're not going to look at this case, do you?
Well, no, but the thing is what are they actually going to hand down, though?
Well,
that's going to be, the actual when we actually get the actual honest truth about it. What are they actually going to hand down? Are we going to get another,
It's going to be 2 or 3 years, isn't it? It's not even going to be.
I mean, as I said, their lives should be over. That's it. If you do something like that, you destroy 2 girls' lives. I mean, I can't even believe someone that young does something of an adult crime like that, to be honest with you. It's unbelievable.
But the idea that you could, I don't even believe you can rehabilitate this. I don't.
No, I think you can.
They planned these 2 rapes. They were months apart. One was in November 24, January 25. They clearly had such fun the first time they did it. They thought they'd do it again. And they planned it, they executed it, they filmed it, they put it on social media. That is not someone we need in society.
No, there's no consequences. There's no repercussions. So if they feel they can get away with it, they'll just carry on.
Yeah, and they would have done if they hadn't been stopped now.
They will.
And I agree. I completely agree. And as I was saying earlier, that it's really dangerous of the courts to behave like this, because people will take the law into their own hands.
Oh, they will, absolutely. But the thing is, though, is the judge has made this 10 times worse when he says, "Oh, you've been so good throughout the trial," and I'm like, what?
It's just infantilising them, like treating them like little children, and they're not little children.
No, it is absolutely insanity. It's absolute insanity.
I'm with you 100%.
It's insane.
Yeah. I don't know where there was no thought about the victims. There was no thought about the victims' families. There was no thought about these young women and what they'd gone through, going through these rapes 3 times. You know, first of all, the actual rape.
Have they?
No,
still not put...
no, and they've got anonymity, and the girls, by nature of putting them on social media, didn't have anonymity. But these boys, I don't think they should be. If it's an adult crime, I think they should be named.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, the thing is this is just another symptom, and it is just another justification that people will see as vigilantes, and that is what's going to happen. And well, we know what happened obviously with Southport, and we could be in another situation like that. We're coming up to July, August time, where it's going to be the height of summer. I mean, I don't know.
Tempers fray. Yeah, I completely agree with you. Tristan, I agree with everything you said, because I just think this case has just highlighted something really, lifted a rock, hasn't it? We've seen underneath it, and it's such a disgusting thing for this judge, in my view, for him to have done.
But what about when there's another case like this? That's going to be the litmus test, because another case like this is going to come about, because we're getting cases like this every single day, you know,
and,
done by...
without a shadow of a doubt, there'll be particularly if this judgment stands, and people think they can do it without any repercussions. Tristan, good to speak to you. Got to take a break. Back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good morning. This is Talk, and it's Talk Back with Petrie. And we are talking about the Court of Appeal, just decided yesterday, has decided the Attorney General put forward to the Court of Appeal that he would like them to re-look at the sentences of the teenage rapists, as they were unduly lenient. The Attorney General did agree that they were unduly lenient, and has pushed them forward to the Court of Appeal. The Court of Appeal can refuse, by the way. I think they're unlikely to in this case, because there's so much public anger about it. So the Court of Appeal is set to review the case, of the 3 teenagers who avoided jail over the rape of 2 girls on 2 separate instances, two different cases, same boys, but 2 different girls, 2 different times. The 3rd boy, who is now 14, was given the YRO, the Youth Rehabilitation Order, for encouraging one of the attackers and for indecent images offence. Apparently there was some child images as well on that young man's phone. I mean, seriously, just when you think it couldn't get any worse. But what about the victims, and what about? I just hope the Court of Appeal do the right thing. I really do. Dave is in Manchester. Morning, Dave.
Hello.
Hello there. Good morning. What do you make of this case?
It's bad if nothing happens. Because I only just found out then, as you were explaining, about one of them was already, about having the images on, indecent images. And so I'll try to cut a long story short. This thing happened when we were I'm 45 now. So when I was 16, this happened to a friend of mine, gang raped. And so there was 3 of them. We knew them. She identified them. But the ringleader, there's usually a ringleader, but I don't think that matters, because somebody who's got that kind of, who's going to do something like that to somebody, they have no empathy, that kind of thing. They don't care. So, and that's exactly what this lad went to our school, and we all sort of knew it, it's like, if you say, there's something wrong, there's not something wrong with him. He's perfectly sane. He's just horrible. And he was like, he used to hurt animals, things like
right,
that.
the total psychopath triad, isn't it?
Yeah.
Starting with the animals.
And he was a bully. Anyway, so I don't want to try and come across, I think, so he attacked me one day with a shard of glass or a broken window. And he was holding onto the glass. He was cutting into his own hand. And a couple of times we've spoken in the past, I've talked about, I've had a life of martial arts, I think. So I defended myself. And he came off bad. Like I don't want to sound like a hero here. Just it's imperative to the story. So he was quite injured when I finished with him. So he healed, and he came back, and he hadn't learned anything. He didn't pick on me again, but he just carried on. In fact, it probably taught him to go for weaker prey.
Yeah.
People talked about it, and he could say, "Oh, what about his home life?" Well, I knew his brother and his sister, and they were perfectly okay.
Yeah, again, there's always so much, he's got a bad habit. So, yeah, but if there are other kids there, they don't turn into these people. So what happened to your friend?
So a year later, I'll never forget, a Saturday morning, my friend, he knocks on the door, and I go to the desk, and then he told me what happened. The 3 of them had, and they'd also been studying her movement. It was literally 2 minutes from where her house was. She'd walked from her friend's house home on a Friday night, and they'd obviously been watching her. So, again, they haven't got attention deficit. Their attention's perfectly. Now, it was all 3 of them took turns raping her. She knew who they were. And now, this is 29 years ago, so the police were a bit tougher then. One of them was 21 at the time. Now, he went to prison. And the other 2 went sort of in and out of, like, remand centres. But they've never changed. They've just gotten worse. As lads, we sort of did the thing, again, not because we didn't allow them to get away with it. We caught up with them, but again, it made no difference. It just made the police come after us and say, you can't go around doing. We said, well, we don't go around doing that. What we're supposed to do. And so now we I haven't seen the guy for a long time, but he has committed some awful things, ongoing, constantly in and out of here. And he's repeatedly raped and he stalks. I've even heard from girls that I know now, women that I know, and they said, look, he was here and that. So we have a protocol amongst us, or that if we see him, what to do, or who to ring. And I mean, I've made it clear to the police that if I encounter him, or if he goes near my family or something, I'll probably do damage he's not going to walk away from. And I don't, it's not something I'm proud of, but I don't know why he's on the street.
Yeah, this is what I was just about to say, Dave, is, this guy sounds like an absolute monster and a complete threat to everybody around him. and he's still on the street. I mean, what do you have to do in this country?
Absolutely.
I mean, that's
now
what
these lads have they've gotten away with it, and you could say, oh, one of them was encouraged into doing it. So what? I mean, if one of my friends said, Dave, let's do that to a girl, I'd punch his face in.
Yeah, exactly. And I think if you're somebody who is happy to go along with a rape, you're a rapist yourself, and you're
Absolutely.
a bad person, and all of those things, and the three of them to plan this, and I don't know how much worse it could have been for this judge. To be honest with you,
yeah, and if you actually know, like I said, because I was at school with someone like this, and there's no sexual thing about it.
No, it's violence. It's just violence and control.
A sexual thing is about feelings. He hasn't got any, and so if they've done what they've done, they should be no. Oh, what about, is it? No, absolutely not. Then they'll do it again. And if they're just going to get away with it, because they're also opportunists, people like that.
Yeah.
Now, if they've got things to try and dodge, it makes it harder for them. Now, if they're just going to be allowed to just walk free, it's really bad, and it's.
Well, it'll play into their egos. Oh, we got away with it. Isn't this great? Let's do it again. I mean, all of that.
Those poor girls. Like, what a degrading situation, to be. Did they know them? They usually know them.
One of them, I do know that they were talking on some social media site, and this was to be their first date.
Yeah.
And then the other friends turned up.
Right.
And it's kind of like,
it's all.
It was all planned.
So it's not. But yeah, in order to do that to somebody, it's not like you're a bit of a wrong and you used to shoplift, but now you're okay. That's not something
I agree.
That is not forgivable, and then it's not something that you want around. Could you imagine how they must feel? That's what it upsets me a bit now. If someone did that to my sister or something, I can't imagine and it's not right. But how would you feel? You'd put them in a wood chipper or something, wouldn't you?
Without absolutely, and I'd be right with you, helping you with the shoes, because I would, because I would be, this kind of crime, it has such damaging repercussion. It goes on forever and ever and ever.
Absolutely.
And I don't think these young men, these boys, these scumbags, have learned anything from this apart from they can get away with it, and
they don't care.
No,
they don't care.
No, and like you said, it's not about sex, it's about violence and control. And why judges like this can't see that, I don't know, Dave. I just don't know. Lovely to talk to you. Thank you. Brilliant call. Quick break, and I'll be back in a second.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, this is Talk, and it's Petrie here with you with Talk Back, and we've been talking about the sentences of those boys spared custody over rape now being referred to the Court of Appeal, and Martin phoned in with this voice note.
Hi, Petrie. Totally agree with you. These traveller kids that raped those two girls, they need custodial sentences. I'd give them a little bit more than that if I was allowed, but custodial sentences, nothing else is acceptable. It's just, you can't let people get away with stuff like this. I don't care what age they were. I knew what was right from wrong when I was 13, 14, so I'm sure they did. And I'm sure they're a little bit more advanced these days, so there's no excuse. There's just no excuse whatsoever. Let them feel the full weight of the law.
Well done, Martin. Well said. Thank you for that. Matt is in Gloucester. Hello, Matt. First-time caller. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, hello, Petrie. I think I rang this radio show, or radio station, around 20 years ago. It's been a while.
It's been a while. And well, welcome back. Welcome back. So, Matt, what do you think about this case?
Look, I think I wanted to say that I really feel awful for the girls. I really feel like in the pit of my stomach that this outcome is supposed to represent justice for them. I think it just doesn't, and I think that they've been found guilty. My feeling is that they should stay in prison until the girls have forgiven them and want them released, and that might be never.
Wouldn't that be wonderful? What a brilliant way to treat this.
But that would be justice. Because
yeah, it would.
How can they live their lives without fear now, knowing that they could bump into either of these young men at any moment?
Yeah, at any moment. And also, you know, one of them was excitedly going on a first meet-up with you know, any date from now on is going to be filled with horror.
Yeah, and I've got a daughter myself, and just to think that she's going on excited to be going on a date. And then that happened. So I really think the society's gone wrong. And then where do we pinpoint, what has gone so wrong that this is regarded as justice?
I don't know. That's a very good question. I have no idea why this judge decriminalised the act of rape.
And the fact that they put it on social media,
I know.
That for me, it makes me think that this isn't just them. This is a grassroots misogynist movement.
I agree.
That probably ties in with Andrew Tate and all of that. I would imagine. Now, I have no evidence for that, but it's my feeling. They put it on social media. They wanted to show this.
They were proud of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's obviously some people there that they were trying to impress. Surely.
I agree. I think that's another really good point. That this is not just about them doing it. It's about them being seen to do it, and it's about them proving a point to somebody or to a whole group of people. Maybe it's an incel group. Who knows? You know.
And my other point, you're right. And my other point I wanted to make really regarding this is that this is a generational difference. Obviously, no one, we know are like this, but young boys should be raised to be gentlemen in my mind. This is how we were. They should be protective of girls, the old, the poor, the widow. And I don't. My worry is in wider society. I would be worried more about a gang of underage kids coming for one of my children or coming for me than I would be for a grown adult or a gang of grown adults. And I don't think that's happened at any time in history.
No.
So we've got something has gone majorly wrong where I think we've gone from a disciplined society, whereas I spent a lot of time, I got in fights when I was at school, but to be fair, a lot of the time I was defending myself, probably more often than not. But in the fights that I got involved in school, I spent a lot of time staring at a wall. And I would stare at the wall for the week if it was a serious issue. And when I wasn't staring at a wall anymore, I didn't want to get in a fight again.
Yeah.